Just then a sort of brightness fell upon me in the barrel, and looking up I found the moon had risen, and was silvering the mizzen top, and shining white of the luff of the foresail, and almost at the same time the voice of the lookout shouted, "Land ho!" Council of War. Chapter 12. There was a great rush of feet across the deck. I could hear people tumbling up from the cabin and the forecastle, and slipping in an instant outside my barrel. I dived behind the foresail, made it double toward the stern, and came out upon the open deck in time to join Hunter and Dr. Livesey in the rush for the weather bow. Their all hands were already congregated. A belt of fog had lifted almost simultaneously with the appearance of the moon. Away to the southwest of us, we saw two low hills, about a couple of miles apart, and rising behind one of them, a third and higher hill, whose peak was still buried in the fog. All three seemed sharp and conical in figure. So much I saw, almost in a dream, for I had not yet recovered from my horrid fear of a minute or two before. And then I heard the voice of Captain Smollett issuing orders. Hispaniola was laid a couple of points nearer the wind, and now sailed a course that would just clear the island on the east. "And now, man," said the captain, when all was sheeted home, "has any one of you ever seen that land ahead?" "I have, sir," said Silver. "I've watered there with a trader I was cook in." "The anchorage is on the south, behind an island, I fancy?" asked the captain. "Yes, sir. Skeleton Island, they calls it. It were a main place for pirates once, and a hand we had on board knowed all their names for it. That hill to the northward they calls the Foremast Hill, and there are three hills in a row, running southward for main and the mizzen, sir. But the main, that's the big one with the cloud on it. They usually calls the spyglass, for reason of a lookout they kept when there was in the anchorage cleaning. For it's there they cleaned their ships, sir, asking your pardon." "I have a chart here," said Captain Smollett. "See if that's the place." Long John's eyes buried in his head as he took the chart, but by the fresh look of the paper, I knew he was doomed to disappointment. This was not the map we found on Billy Bones' chest, but an accurate copy, complete in all things, names and heights and soundings, with a single exception of the red crosses and the written notes. Sharp as must have been his annoyance, Silver had the strength of mind to find it. "Yes, sir," said he. "This is the spot, to be sure, and very prettily drawn out. Who might have done that, I wonder? The pirates were too ignorant, I reckon. Aye, here it is, kept Kidd's Anchorage. That's the name my shipmates called it. There's a strong current runs along the south, and then away northward up the west coast. Right you was, sir," says he, "to hold your wind and to keep the weather of the island. Leastways, if such was your intention as to enter the Careen, and there ain't no better place for it that is in these waters." "Thank you, my man," said Captain Smollett. "I'll ask you later on to give us a help. You may go." I was surprised at the coolness with which John avowed his knowledge of the island, and I own I was half frightened when I saw him drawing near to myself. He did not know, to be sure, that I had overheard his counsel from the apple barrel, and yet I had by this time taken such a horror of his cruelty, duplicity, and the power, that I could scarce conceal a shudder when he laid his hand upon my arm. "Ah," says he, "here it is, a sweet spot, this island, a sweet spot for a lad to get ashore on. You'll bathe, and you'll climb trees, and you'll hunt goats, you will, and you'll get aloft on them hills like a goat yourself. Why, it makes me young again. I was going to forget my timber leg, I was. It's a pleasant thing to be young and to have 10 toes. and you may lay on that. When you want to go a bit exploring, you just ask old John, and he'll put a snack for you to take along." And clapping me on the friendliest way upon the shoulder, he hopped off forward and went below. Captain Smollett, the squire, and Dr. Livesey were talking together on the quarterdeck, and anxious as I was to tell them my story, I durst not to interrupt them openly. While I was still casting about my thoughts to find some probable cause, Dr. Livesey called me to his side. He had left his pipe below, and being a slave to tobacco, had meant that I should fetch it. But as soon as I was near enough to speak and not to be overheard, I broke immediately. "Doctor, let me speak. Let the captain and the squire down to the cabin, and then make some pretense to send for me. I have terrible news." The doctor changed the countenance a little, and next moment he was master of himself. "Thank you, Jim," said he quite loudly. "That was all I wanted to know." And if he had asked me a question. And with that he turned on his heel and rejoined the other two. They spoke together for a little, and thought none of them started or raised his voice, for so much as whistled. It was plain, though, enough that Dr. Livesey had communicated my request, for the next thing I heard was the captain giving an order to Job Anderson, and all hands were piped on deck. "My lads," said Captain Smollett, "I have a word to say to you. This land that we have sighted is the place we have been sailing for Mr. Trelawney. Being a very open-handed gentleman, as we all know, he just asked me a word or two, and as I was able to tell him that every man on board had done his duty, alow and aloft, as I never asked to see it done better, why, he and I and the doctor are going below to the cabin to drink your health and luck, and you'll have grog served out for you to drink our health and luck. I'll tell you what I think of this. I think it's handsome, and if you think as I do, you'll give a good sea cheer for the gentleman that does it." The cheer followed, and was a matter of course, but it rang out so full and heartily that I confess I could hardly believe these same men were plotting for our blood. "One more cheer for Captain Smollett," cried Long John. The first hips of